we can either have the hearing date for the zoning amendment, zoning amendments, on January 9th, or use January 9th to do more work, and have the first zoning amendment hearing on Monday the 20th, but that's only if everybody can make it, or like almost everybody. Vicky is not here. Here she is. So why don't we do the minutes in the meantime? I have a few non-impactful changes. Does anybody have?
Which set of minutes?
All of them. All of them. So let's start with the first. Okay. Does anybody have significant changes or just?
Is this on the date of the 14th?
Yeah.
Yes, the 14th.
Yeah. Anybody have anything on that?
I have anything on
Okay, I don't either. So why don't we take the vote now that Vicky's here? We're voting on the oldest minutes of October, or whatever month that was. November 14th.
I probably wasn't there.
She wasn't.
Okay.
So,
According to the minutes, you were not.
I'd like to make a
Well, I
motion.
had an absence.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes as is.
I'll second it.
There's a second. Were you there for that? Okay, we're all those in favor?
So David, basically, it's the Stadler, Cook, Brown, that's it.
Yep.
Stadler, Cook, Brown, you were there? Okay, so the three of us we all voted in approval? Okay, so that's done. Now we're moving to the do we do these separately, or?
It was a continued meeting, so,
Let's just do them all.
I would just do it all at
Okay.
once. And
So the 11/25 and
December 2.
and December 2nd meetings. Who has comments on this?
I just have a question,
Yeah.
which I'm sure everybody else knows what this is, but bottom of the first page, the board discussed the accessibility requirements.
That's a good question. What did you mean by accessibility?
the HUD.
Oh, so let's put in the legal requirements.
Or handicap accessibility?
Well, it was broader than that, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was
All of the legal requirements.
The legal,
Let's
the
just
HUD.
put legal, if that's okay with everybody.
Yeah, just a clear.
Yeah, that's a
Where is
good,
this again?
the bottom of the first
First
page,
Last sentence.
the second to last sentence. The board discussed the accessibility requirements, changing it to legal requirements. Okay, I have,
A couple fussy things on.
I have fussy stuff
Oh,
too.
okay, go ahead, keep going.
Go ahead, no, do your fussy stuff.
Okay.
Maybe it'll cover some of
Sue
mine.
McKenzie capitalizes the K in her name, and that appears twice. I would strike the word short from the second paragraph in item 1 and the fourth paragraph.
No, hold on, I don't know.
First page.
So
So
still first page.
Item 1,
Item 1, John gave an overview to the members of the public. Strike the word short.
I don't care.
I mean,
Okay, that's fine with me.
and then same comment in the 2 paragraphs down, discussion for a short public comment session.
Where's this?
The board, 2 paragraphs down, the board paused discussions for a public comment session.
Sure.
Okay,
The next paragraph, I would change the second to last phrase. It currently says, should not be restricted to the Lyme Common
oh,
District.
you lost me,
only."
where are you?
Okay.
Oh, I got it, yeah.
I'm trying to find where,
Okay, so it's the third paragraph from the bottom,
okay,
second from the bottom line. It currently says, should not be restricted. And I'm suggesting that phrase should be changed to not to restrict senior housing to the Lyme Common District, just it's a little better parallelism.
I had the same thing, I said not to restrict,
Okay,
and
all right.
adding the senior housing is fine
Yep.
with me, if it's fine with everybody else.
That's all.
That's, okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, hold on. I would, in the very, up at the date at the top, I would say 11/25 and 12/2/2019.
Sure, we can do that.
Just because I couldn't find the minutes for the second.
Okay.
Go ahead, I'm done.
That's it, okay.
Uh,
I have fussy stuff. Item 1, the board met for a working session, blah, 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 blah. Second line, housing zoning amendment, due to the large public attendance, comma. The board had a short discussion on how to take out they want, how to proceed. The board decided proceed, board discussion for approximately 45 minutes, have a short public comment time, and then at an end. We got all your stuff, okay,
Say that again,
which one?
Public comment time and then.
and then.
Yeah.
Okay, I couldn't figure out where you,
Okay, and then going on to the next page, after the first sentence, that John suggested that the board continue the meeting to another night. I didn't suggest that date, so I think the best thing to say was Monday, December 2nd was chosen as the nearest practical date. Yeah, tell me when you're ready.
how do you want that to, I guess, I'm trying to,
Monday, December 2nd was chosen as the nearest practical date.
Period before Monday.
Huh?
Put a period before Monday, drop suggesting.
Right, exactly. Okay. Rich Brown is Rich Brown, so board members absent, alternate Rich, added
Oh,
B,
oh dear,
yeah.
good catch.
And then down towards the bottom, it says Kevin asked that going forward a revision date be added for each new draft. That's with an I.
hold on, go back up to where, I'm trying to find,
Oh, Matt Brown, I mean, not Matt, Rich.
Rich Brown.
oh,
Under board members
I see,
absent.
I missed
then
the
you-
B, okay,
Yep.
Then you get Sue McKenzie in the next
Yeah.
line,
yeah, okay.
and then you get town council,
Oh, yeah,
road council.
yeah.
I have always messed that up.
It's just a one of those.
These things are
brain.
easy to miss when you're writing these out.
And
So then down, what you,
do we want to put bullets by the three questions?
no, I mean, you can, I don't care. If you want to, just.
Or just, I don't care, some,
No,
You can put a
Okay.
colon after it, town council for answer.
let's move this thing along. Come on, let's move this along. Kevin asked, Kevin with an I,
Yeah.
and out of, just for the historical record, Kevin did ask going forward, a revision date be added for each new draft. There was not a consensus for this, that's why there is no revision date. So, just to follow that up, so I would add there was not a consensus for this.
People wanna be in the dark, I'm sure. Okay.
We'll just keep working off whatever rev we want.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, it was a good point, but it was
Oh, I
blown
know.
away, so.
Yes, it was.
I thought, you know.
Well, this one has it, so.
Okay,
December
the
2nd,
board
so
then,
that's
the
good.
board discussed the issue of trying to ensure that I would add historical and architectural integrity,
Mhm.
and that's all I got. So that's that. And,
I'll move them.
yeah, okay, so they're moved with amendments by who? By you?
no, I wasn't there and I still
Oh.
have a question, so.
Okay,
this
go
is-
ahead.
This is, do we want to get a second before we have a discussion?
Technically, yes.
Yes, I'll second
Okay,
it.
okay.
I've already seconded.
So,
Please speed it up, because we got a lot of work to do.
Good. I asked that a number of questions be addressed
Yes.
by this group.
Yes.
The minutes do not reflect.
We did not address them, so they're not in the minutes.
Good.
Well, actually, that's not true. They were addressed in large part, and maybe completely, through the back and forth with but we didn't go through
We
them.
didn't go through his
We didn't
list.
go through your list,
Okay.
but they were addressed, mostly, if
A
not
lot
all
of
of
the
them.
talking, yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Because I was working off a list.
If you wanted to add that the questions Rich submitted were incorporated into the discussion with the public.
I don't
you could-
care.
You could do that.
We didn't do that intentionally, that was like random.
Oh, no, it was
Oh, did
intentional,
you?
it was
Oh, did
intentional
you
by.
No,
intentionally do that?
He
Okay,
he
I
did
didn't-
hit a few of them.
No,
I
more than a
know,
few,
you
it was
did.
intentional.
I didn't sit there with your.
Anyway,
go
do
check,
you,
check, check.
how do you wanna,
We
what's your,
didn't formally
didn't-
respond
no.
to each one, but we did discuss them.
yes.
Would that be fair to say?
Would what be fair?
That you didn't formally respond
No,
to?
we-
No,
need to
that's
say
not
that.
fair, because
Okay.
we
So-
responded to the questions, but not directly off your list.
Okay.
The board doesn't work for Rich Brown.
No, so, I mean, I really don't think that needs to be addressed.
Right.
And, all right, so we can vote this.
Yes.
I'd like to
I
make a
second.
motion to move these minutes as amended by me. My name's John. Anybody else? And Tim?
No, I voted for it,
And,
yeah, I seconded it.
Good, it's already been voted in.
I seconded it,
okay,
Yeah.
okay, so all in favor?
yeah.
I'm in
Okay.
favor of the part that I can vote on, which is the first of the two.
Okay, David will figure that out. All right, so now getting back to
You
the,
can vote even if you're not there. and sort of-
getting back to the issue about the hearing dates. The board could certainly benefit by having an extra date to work on this, on the senior housing, but if not, so be it. So our options are either to have the first hearing January 9th, or to use that as another working session, and instead have the first one at a special date meeting, which would be Monday the 20th. Am I right about that?
Yes.
The 9th is our next meeting.
That's a holiday.
Is
Monday
it?
It's Martin
Oh,
Luther
yeah,
King
it
Day.
is, I didn't
Oh,
realize
I
that.
didn't know
So
that.
that's not a good day to choose for.
No, it's
hearing.
not. All
I
right.
think we should suck it up and get it ready to go for January 9th.
All right, so January 9th,
It needs, what we want is public input.
we
so-
have, I'm wondering whether we can ask Phil Pacoda to, whether we can, well, we don't wanna have him on the same night where we're
Why don't we
doing-
just meet half an hour early and take care of his thing? So we come at
Well,
6:30 and.
yeah, you have to continue, vote, I assume just vote to
We-
continue to 6:30 and then,
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, if everyone would do that, just so that we can get
and
him
I'll let him know.
out. We're
Okay.
not-
Although, yeah, that would be,
Is that
Yeah.
doable?
Yeah.
that's doable.
Can everybody be here at
Yeah.
6:30?
Yeah.
That's on the 9th.
Yeah.
Okay, so, first off, we're going to, we have to open his hearing,
His
right?
hearing, yes.
So I'm formally opening his hearing, and.
I'll make a motion to continue his hearing, at his request until Thursday, January 9th at 6:30
Okay,
PM.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, so that's done.
I will let him know that it's gonna be earlier and,
Right,
Hopefully he's all better by
yeah,
then.
he's,
Yeah.
basically has pneumonia.
Yeah.
So it's just a couple of days in the hospital and he says he will be out.
Still,
Well, that's what he didn't sound too bad, so.
All
it's-
right.
okay, so January 9th is going to be the first hearing, and we'll have time for the second hearing, which would be January 23rd.
No, I don't think we can. If we change something on January 9th, I don't think we can potentially,
2 weeks later.
you can't do it, just with, because you need, it's not just 10
14
days,
days.
it's more. So, I run into this in Hanover, you just can't change something and have something 2 weeks later. So
So
it's-
when's our drop dead date?
The two dates, the drop dead date
It's February
is 3rd.
Yeah.
So how much time, I thought that was gonna be okay though.
Yeah, that's fine, I mean, we
No,
can,
no, I thought,
we can have a second hearing on the 23rd or the 30th.
what?
You just said.
You just said we couldn't.
We can have a second, yeah, we just can't do it on, oh, sorry, not on the 23rd, on the 30th, we have to have it. Yeah.
Is that right, David?
There's a different thing for zoning amendment notices.
Yeah, let me
than
go
there is
grab
for-
my book just to make sure that we're,
Yeah, I didn't bring my statute, but
Okay.
it's not just the plain old 10 days. It says something particularly in the amendment of the zoning ordinance, and it's, I don't know why they do that, but,
So if you don't count the holiday, the 20th,
you have to count the the holidays for you, I mean, you just
Okay.
count days, you don't
week,
exclude
work
business
days?
That's only for the minutes,
Oh.
but not for notice, purposes of notice. So, yeah, there's something that it makes it impossible
So
to
that's
do
taking
it.
more than 14 days or something.
Well,
13.
actually, what we have, I mean,
Maybe
even if we
13 days.
scheduled it for the 23rd, if we changed it, you know, you've gotta get it in the paper and then have 10 clear days, not including the day of notice or the day of hearing. But it's a little bit longer for zoning amendments than it is for planning board hearings.
Hmm.
That just, you know, on the case. So that would be like amendment of the zoning ordinance, like 676, you know, or maybe 675, the amendment stuff.
okay, 6. It's never clear which,
Yeah, we have to be in a town with, form of government. Is it 675?
it's 675, I'm just trying to,
I can, if you want me to grab that, I could.
well, it's, I think 675, 2 and 3 of the, I'm just trying to figure out which one is the,
So let's maybe, should we just assume? I think he's right.
So when can we meet?
So there, that's where we're gonna.
If we're gonna meet on a Thursday, the 30th, then.
But that's not too late?
No, because we have to convey the wording to the town clerk by February 3rd, which is 5 weeks in front of town meeting.
So the
Yes,
30th is okay?
30th works, yeah, it just, after that, there's no changes,
And that's a Thursday?
yes.
Thursday?
Regular meeting.
So is that instead of the 23rd, or
Yes.
in addition to?
Well, we might have business, so we meet the 23rd and then just have the hearing on the 30th, but,
So,
So our two regular days, the 9th and 23rd?
right, yes,
I don't have a calendar for,
Yes,
Yep.
that's correct.
yep.
okay.
all right, so we're working on the assumption that we're going to have the second hearing on the 30th, right?
So not to convolute things, but could we make our 23rd meeting on the 30th? Like the
Yes.
whole thing?
We could, yeah,
Instead of,
having two,
right,
yeah, we could
Well,
certainly.
that's-
The only thing is if we have business to do, we might wanna, you know, meet
Well, if
then
we
to
have
take
business,
care
I
of-
think we'll just have to, yeah, that business will have to be scheduled after the hearings, that takes precedence,
Yeah.
you know.
So we're saying.
For me, you know, I don't like more meetings, cause I live at night meetings, but I'm happy to meet on the 23rd if there is a, you know, site plan or subdivision or, well, I don't know.
If there is, and you're
Yeah.
willing to come, I would come.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
Is
can-
anybody else willing to come, the extra meeting?
I'll be here.
but only
Might
to
as
do
well leave it
that.
on the calendar for now, leave.
Yeah, leave, so we'll
Put
leave it
both
on the
Yeah.
calendar,
Put
and if
both on
nothing
the
comes
calendar for
in,
now,
we
and then-
won't
and
have
then
the
Yeah,
meeting.
just so we don't inconvenience like a person who's just trying to do the right thing by having
Right.
their thing reviewed,
Good
I'm happy
point.
to do that.
It's easier to drop it than it is to add it if you need it.
Yeah, all right. So, shall we just go on this assumption, David?
If you want, I can take a look and see
Yeah,
if we can
it's,
take minutes, cause I know it's in there because it's been a pain in my,
Yeah, 'cause it keeps
in my
pointing me back
schedule.
over to 675 or
This
six.
is not the vernacular, so we just need,
The 7, which is the next page.
deals with it.
No,
Yeah, deals with the hearings, yeah.
but I'm not sure, that only says 10 days. And I thought there was
Yeah, you guys go on and I'll.
675,
and I'll
3 through
confirm that.
14 are the
Mhm.
14 days prior to the last date to, New Hampshire Municipal Association has it 675-3. 14
Mhm.
days prior to the last date to hold a public hearing on the zoning. So you have to have 14 days between,
14 clear days, which
Yeah.
we wouldn't have.
right,
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
so
okay,
let's-
so there it is right there.
So we've, all right, so
Yeah,
we-
you
we've got
can't
that.
do it. That was-
So what we're gonna do
this
is
not
have the
10
first
clear days.
hearing,
You can do 10 clear days.
okay,
so.
we're gonna have the first hearing on January 9th.
Yep.
And we have two amendments, we have the petition zoning amendment, we might as well do that first. And then the senior housing amendment. And then we're gonna keep our regularly scheduled meeting if needed.
The 23rd?
Yeah, if needed. If it's not needed, it won't be needed. And then the second hearing will be on the 30th. All right?
30th,
What about the hearing for the lot line?
We just continued that
Yeah,
till.
to 6:30.
6:30.
So we're gonna take a half hour before the
Okay.
regular meeting time,
Okay.
okay?
Glad I caught that, because I did not hear that part.
Okay. All right, so I'd like to move on to the
Do you
senior,
have a vote to,
Right here.
I know we didn't have a vote.
Here's the-
Okay, I'd like to make a motion,
675-3.
yeah, that's.
I'd like to make a motion to set the hearing dates for both zoning amendments. The first hearing being January 9th at 7 PM, and the second being January 30th at 7 PM. Is there a second? All those in favor? All those opposed? All right, that passes. So let's go on to the zoning amendment, and
It's the hardest thing to remember.
if
No,
it's,
I know.
if it's okay with everybody, I'd like to run through the working version that you all have, and then we can all make our comments.
You can strike the revision date at the bottom, because I messed up and didn't realize that was shot down.
No, I like it there, that's perfect.
Oh, okay. No, I'm glad that,
So John, say it again, so you're gonna go through,
I'm gonna.
we're gonna sit and listen as you go through?
Yeah, and just.
Hold your horses?
No, don't hold your horses. As I go through, make whatever comments you wanna make. Now, I think we were set with the definitions. Or does anybody have issues on definitions?
I'm good.
Okay. And then Article 13, senior housing. Senior housing is a residential use suited to the needs of older people. I have a question about using older people. I think it's clearer, given that we've defined seniors above, to say senior housing is a residential use suited to the needs of seniors.
Mhm.
And also older people could, it's the Older People's Act, HOPA, and this is not a HOPA thing. We are without HOPA. So I would recommend seniors in that line, for clarity's sake. Yeah, is there an objection to that?
It's just that it's redundant.
I
You
know,
usually don't
it's
use
not
it.
artful, but, I mean, if you wanna go with older people, it's okay with me.
Would that, what's her name, Ashton Applegate or whatever, this chair rocks, what would she say?
I really.
There's a PC way of talking about it, and I don't think it's senior.
Elders, of elders,
Older
don't-
people, doesn't, you can't like define that.
Well, you could-
She talks about what's PC, and, it's not a definition, because we already have it defined about what senior housing is,
And you
and,
can say the seniors as defined above, and then.
no, well, that's not above, because definitions are in their own section.
Article 2.
Yeah,
As defined by.
And-
So if we just make it an uppercase senior, or seniors, I mean, you're right, it's a little,
It's
redundant.
redundant, it's totally
yeah,
redundant.
no,
But
okay,
it's-
we
but
can just
it's-
go on, I'll look that. and
But
see
it's
what she said.
legally clear.
I think it's fine.
I mean, I think
Seniors,
legal clarity should trump
Right.
artfulness.
It's fine.
All right, so we'll come back to that. And the,
Well,
let's not.
Let's do it.
Okay.
No,
Let's get
I'm
it.
looking up and
No,
see what
no.
she says.
Yeah, I don't, I think John's,
No,
the
she's-
clarity
let's
of
leave
the
seniors.
words is fine.
Is more
If
important.
if it's not, is artful, that's okay.
Yeah.
okay, is that acceptable? Does anybody feel really strongly that it shouldn't be redundant there?
so you're suggesting the word seniors?
Yes.
Yes.
Do you wanna capitalize it to make it clear that
No.
this is a?
I mean, I'm not closed to that possibility, I don't think it's necessary, but, okay, so, is the consensus that seniors is okay?
Mhm.
And if Vicky finds something that sounds
Yeah.
better, we'll revisit it. Okay, and then this I'm not sure about, but I was looking at some other language, and in the first line, or continuing that first, close to municipal and social services and facilities, and designed to facilitate independent living with an emphasis on safety, accessibility, and human scale within the development. I thought that was a nice,
What is it?
meaningful touch.
What does that mean?
It means that, well, to me, what it means is that it's not going to be too overwhelmingly, you know,
Unhuman?
inhuman. But I don't feel strongly about it. If that resonated with people, so be it. I
I
don't,
mean, present character.
I'm not recognizing a lot of resonance with that, so let's skip it.
Yeah.
Okay. Then continuing, a senior housing development must meet the requirements for site plan review under 1210, as well as the following criteria.
So you're leaving in the remainder of that paragraph, the exterior.
Yeah,
appearance. Okay.
it's as
Yeah.
is, step. So, this to me was here's what I would recommend. Senior housing may be located in one or more buildings on a lot in the Lyme Common zoning district.
So why don't you say, I think that it's clear that it could be in more than one building, so it could say senior housing may be located in buildings or on lots.
Well, why or? Buildings have to be on the lot.
Okay, buildings on, building, or, you could put parentheses around the S.
Mm.
May be located in building, and then parentheses S, on a lot in the Lyme Common zoning district. Because I think that, yes, they could be,
But
In
if
more
we
than one
say,
building.
if senior housing may be located in buildings, it sounds
Yeah.
like it has to be more than one building.
no, if it gives you the choice, if you have building, and then a parentheses, and then S, and then put the other paren on the other side of the S, it's
Okay.
either building or
It
buildings.
infers.
But
Yeah.
I think
that's functionally the same as one or more buildings.
Yeah.
Yes,
It
it
is.
is, it is.
So it's clear if you say one or more.
That's what I think.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, so one or more buildings. So the issue, oh, wait,
Wait,
yeah.
what words are we writing down here?
One or more-
Senior
one or more.
housing may be located in one or more
One or
buildings.
more, okay.
On a lot,
I don't know.
A lot.
in the
yeah.
Lyme Common
Yep,
zoning
yep.
district. And let me know when you're all ready.
Mhm.
Okay, so I just had one question about that.
Yeah.
So if the lot is partially in the Lyme Common zoning district, what happens then? So does
The part that's in the, my understanding is the part that's in the district is governed by this.
Okay, so on a lot or portion of the lot, in the Lyme zoning, in the
Okay.
Lyme Common zoning district,
Good point,
okay?
yeah.
Yeah, we talked
So
about that,
senior housing may be located in one or more buildings on a lot or,
portion of that lot
or,
Or on the portion of that.
on.
or on a portion of, very good
Or
catch.
on the portion of the
I like that.
lot.
Yep,
Well,
Or
what is
on
it?
the portion of the lot within the Lyme district. You
But
wanna
the is specific, and, you know, it's like
Yes.
a
But
particular
that's what
lot.
you're saying,
Yes,
though.
yeah.
What you're saying
Could
is,
be the
it can either be
portion.
on the lot
Should
or
be
on
the-
the portion that is
Yes,
in the
yes.
district,
All right, so, or on the portion of the lot,
within the Lyme district,
within the Lyme Common zoning district.
lot within,
Yep,
the Lyme common
so
zone.
not in, within. Everybody got that?
yep.
Very good catch. And let me know when you're ready for the next thing. So, there was some feedback, well, first of all, Stephen, our lawyer, is leaving, which is, you know, a problem, because our feedback is, we're kinda gonna have to go back to square one on our feedback, but
So is he leaving like this week?
by Christmas. So, the question of mixed use, he answered but not adequately. He said, it was a non-answer, he said, if I, and
I have
correct,
the whole
but,
email
yeah,
right
but
here.
correct me if I'm wrong, the gist of it is, yes, we can have mixed use, but it was like, yes, we have no bananas. We can have mixed use, but only if it's in compliance. And he didn't clarify what that compliance would be. So we need to hear from the new person about this. So I think for the time being, we really can't address it.
Actually, having a new person come in when you're in a near final draft is not a bad thing.
No, it's not,
Then you've got, they're gonna be
right.
tabula rasa.
Right,
And
exactly.
everything's gonna have to be clear to them.
It's gonna have to be quick, though.
So, okay, so, but does everyone around the table say we would like to have it mixed use?
It depends, I mean, my reaction is it depends on what that mixed use means, and it's not clear to me.
Okay, well, okay, so just to say, you could see senior housing mixed in with.
Yes,
Okay, yes.
if it's legal.
Okay, and so I think, you know, rather than sitting here, I don't know when we're gonna sit here again, or on January 9th.
Well,
Maybe
I'm
we-
sure we're gonna have changes from the lawyer.
Right, so is it your intention then not to put in the mixed use portion in this draft, or is it?
Well, it's the board's decision. I don't know how we can put it in.
This draft will go to
What?
the attorney, right?
Yeah, what I'd like to do is ask the attorney how is it legal, and how can we, I think we should, actually what we should do is write out questions concerning mixed use for the lawyer.
But John, what if we wrote it the way,
How would you like
Yeah,
to
no,
write it?
so
and
I,
then give that to the
well,
attorney, and then she can say
I just saw,
yes or no?
I thought, it was, best addressed using gross floor area. So the gross floor area of a senior housing dwelling, unit common areas and the accessory buildings associated with, senior housing, must exceed 70% of the gross floor area of all the development on the lot. In order for the planning board.
You completely lost me.
Okay, so what I'm saying is that if we're gonna have mixed use, we wanna track the gross floor area of the senior dwelling unit, the common area, which we say doesn't count in the 1,200, plus the accessory, buildings, like the garage or the shed, okay? And that all that combined must be 70% of the total gross floor area on that lot in order for that to be a senior housing project. That's what I'm.
Okay,
So I'm
so,
just saying, you could substitute 50% or whatever, but I'm saying the idea is to take all the things that count as, you know, part of the senior housing,
right, so how does that,
the dwelling unit, that means 30% of the gross floor area on the lot could
Can
be
be for
some
other
other
things.
use. And it could be, for me, I'm happy with other residential, or it could be any other use that's allowed in the Lyme Common zoning district.
okay, so can you write that down, or do you have it?
Yes, I have
written?
written it down here. But how I phrased it was actually that, so all those things must add up to 70%, must exceed 70% of the gross floor area of all the development on the lot in order for the planning board to vary the dimensional controls as described in E. Because basically, the only thing you're getting if you put senior housing in is E, which is a waiver of the dimensional controls. Otherwise, you can have senior housing
Right.
there, but you don't get the special E.
Right,
So that's my, like, conceptual proposal, and you guys can
okay,
mess with
but we
the-
have,
yeah.
we have a,
I can write that down for David.
Okay.
If you guys agree, yes, we're gonna add up all those things that make senior housing.
so I'd like to have that, let's hold that, because as we go through this,
Right.
we might come back to that, but
Right.
that's a great solution, I mean,
Yeah.
that's a great
Well, I just was thinking, how
format
how
for
would
a
we do
solution.
that?
Okay,
And then what is the advantage? The only advantage is the E, honestly,
right,
or, or.
well, it's a
or-
pretty
or
big,
D.
well, no, it's,
Well, D and E, they are
One
basically the two
idea
things
in
together.
terms of phrasing that would be to flip it around to say something like, while the primary purpose of the development would be senior housing, up to 30% maybe other permitted uses in
yeah.
the Lyme common.
The thing,
Or something like that, which, just the converse of what you
Yeah.
said, but tries to
Yeah.
put the focus on the senior housing.
yeah, I think we
We
have
don't
to
have
be,
to wordsmith it.
having read obviously the lawyer is gonna tell us what we can do, but I have read these laws, and it clearly states that exclusively for people 62 years of age and older, it's like absolutely clear. It's an exemption from the Fair Housing Act, and you get that exemption under these conditions. Then it refers you to, all this other stuff eventually. So I don't know how that works. So anything that we write should, as David was just saying, really emphasize that this is for senior housing is defined here. That's what it's for, and under these conditions, you can have whatever. And then the lawyer will tell us whether we can do that or not. But I think it's good to give the lawyer,
So the question,
language
so the
that-
question for lawyers, can it be 1% or 99%, or some range in between? That's the only clarification we really need?
well, I think we can use some form or the exact form of Vicky's language and say, is this legal?
Legal.
And is there any basement or attic to the,
Exactly.
to the thing? Yeah.
Exactly.
And then we can make the correction.
In some
Well,
schemes.
then you gotta go back to the debate discussion, should it be 50%,
Right.
70%, 100%?
Right. That, right.
There's, in Stephen's comment to, because the question came up, I asked him specifically about the mixed use and 3 different scenarios for mixed use. And so, his vague response, and I kind of pushed him a little bit more, and he was supposed to get information from the Hampshire Housing Finance Authority. They had not returned his calls. He talked to the folks in the office, which would be Laura and Walter. And they think he was taking kind of a narrow view of the statute, and did say that if you added the language, because the issue is RSA 354A:15, that it's the one that allows very fair housing.
Yeah. The exemption.
The exemption. He said, by stating the developer must conform to the requirements of RSA 354-A:15, including but not limited to the provisions of housing under the housing under a state or federal program determined by USA.HUD, is specifically designed and operated to assist elderly persons. It's lawyer speak.
Yeah, and
That's-
I don't think that wordiness is required, I mean, I hope, because I can't imagine why you can't just say compliant with.
Right.
Three-
As permitted under.
Under that.
Under that.
But
You
he's
say
like-
sort of what I said and then just
Yeah.
tack on as permitted under.
Yeah, but anyway, we have to get clarity on that. He's gone.
Yeah.
all right.
Although the town does have the ability, if they want to, continue with him and use him in his new firm.
Yes, that's good to know.
He just wanted us to know that.
Right. All right, so can we move on from A? For the
I
time,
just wondered, in the red, when it says W/5, what does 5 mean?
where?
Units, I think that's with 5
Yeah,
units.
two buildings with 5 units each.
Oh, but we've already addressed that.
Oh, okay,
She's white.
okay, I just wondered, I didn't know what that meant.
Okay,
Okay, good, okay.
all right, so can we go on to B? I think we'll end up going through this twice, probably, at least. Can we go to B for now?
Yes,
All right, now, I understood that everybody was on board with this as of last time, but if not, speak now for B.
I think it's fine.
The only question that I had was, somebody in the audience asked about what if it was a family member who had young children? And we just say no.
We can't do that.
Can't do it for now.
Yeah.
All right, that's
No,
fine.
It could be a daughter or a son who's a caregiver.
But they can't
Right,
have their
they
own
can't
kids.
have their own young.
Right,
No.
right.
No, this is a 60, I mean, the law reads pretty clearly. This is aimed at you get the exemption from the Fair Housing Act because you're addressing a perceived need
Right.
for this age group. And any caretaker is done as a service to those, I mean, this is my interpretation, as a service to that targeted group.
And I just see that issue that they're talking about is a way of gaming the system. You know, you have a elderly couple, they have a single parent child, and they want them to move in. They don't really need a caregiver, but they say, oh, this person's going to be my caregiver, and oh, they have a 6-year-old too.
And an 8-year-old and a
and-
9-year-old.
Yeah, and you know, all of a sudden you now have,
No, I get it, I'm somewhat sympathetic to somebody
Oh, I am too.
who's legitimately would like to have their single parent child
Yeah.
be a caregiver, and you'd have to say, sorry, we couldn't allow
Well,
that, because
but their
there's too many
child,
other
what,
ways.
their 7-year-old child is gonna be a caregiver?
No, the older, the elderly couple,
25-year-old.
wanted their caregiver to be, say,
Well, I
a
think-
25-year-old who
I
happens to
don't,
have a kid.
but I don't know what the legal definition of caregiver is. If we're saying caregiver and their child is the caregiver,
No,
No,
I'm
he's
not saying
talking
that.
about-
No,
I'm
he's
saying
saying
that
caregiver to
the,
the
the,
child.
the elderly couple has a child
yeah,
Yeah.
who is, or a,
The
an
caregiver.
adult
child,
progeny,
yeah,
who's their caregiver,
Yeah.
who happens to have
oh,
a
They
child.
wanna
I mean,
bring their child. with
yeah,
them.
I mean,
Right.
where does it stop?
Why can't we come stay with grandma? So, I mean, I'm just saying, I'm empathetic to that,
But this
I
sort of
agree, I agree
makes,
with you.
it sort of makes some of the flexibility though, if you go with the 70% kind of thing,
Right.
that 30% could be occupied by, if you had someone in this special case, it gives you that flexibility, you can still be the caregiver,
General
but you're in the
next
1/3.
door.
Exactly.
Let's let the market settle that.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
But it gives, that does help for these exceptions, if you will.
Yeah,
Okay.
By having some percentage that doesn't have to be 100% compliant with senior
Right.
housing.
if that's the case.
Okay, all right, I'm good with it.
So, all right, so you're good with that? David?
Yes.
Everybody's okay with that?
yep.
All right, so let's go to the senior housing,
See,
C. I switched this around. Is it okay if I read my solution to this? Or-
Is it, what's it, red?
Your proposal?
No, this is a new proposal coming out of this language. Senior housing dwelling units may be no larger than 1,200 square feet. Common areas shall not be counted as residential square footage within the principal structure.
Mm-hmm.
The maximum building footprint,
Of,
hold on,
I wrote the
So-
same thing.
so, but the other thing was that originally when we wrote this up, we had maximum gross floor area.
Mm-mm,
Yeah, well, I'm just telling you, that's what we had.
well, okay, this one doesn't have
I know,
that, okay.
but it got dropped and,
Right.
and from my point of view, it wasn't intentional. But, so
No, this is good.
I'll give you this and then you can take it from there.
Mm-hmm.
The maximum building footprint and maximum gross floor area of all the buildings on the lot may be no larger than 12,000 square feet.
No, you can't have that,
Okay, explain.
because footprint is what's touching the ground. If it has a second floor, you don't wanna limit the second floor to just what's, one story.
Well, but the reason you weren't here for this, but the reason we chose 12,000 square feet
Mhm.
was, as a multiple of 10, but
Mhm.
also because if somebody wanted to do it all on one floor,
Mhm.
they could have that size footprint.
Mhm.
And if we just have it as building footprint, then you can have a 24,000 square foot building, and that's not what we
No,
were
no,
after.
gross square feet, not building footprint.
What?
Right, okay, so if you're allowing a 12,000 square foot building footprint,
Yeah,
you can double it by making a second story,
right.
right? So,
But if we also have maximum gross floor area limited to that amount, you can have a 12,000 square foot
yes.
first floor, which
Yep.
is good for seniors,
Yep,
but you can't have a 24,000 square foot.
you can have nothing upstairs,
Right,
Yeah.
or you could have a 6,000.
Or you could have 6,000
Right,
top and bottom,
right, yes,
okay?
yep,
So is that acceptable?
no.
Okay, well, that's what I'm asking.
I don't know, if someone's gonna build this and they can put like regular people housing or office space upstairs, I'm
But
happy with that.
you're gonna have a 24,000 square feet in the common?
That would be almost twice as big as Earl's building.
No, that would not be, look at Earl's building, it's almost most of it is 2 stories.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's
Yeah.
enormous,
You have 14,000 square feet on the ground,
yeah.
So it's
footprint.
28,000.
and so you're talking that, with the 2 stories.
Yeah. 28,000, so this would be 24,000.
If you're allowing 12,000 square feet on the floor, I don't have a problem with, it's gonna look like senior housing. Most of our buildings, what do you have that's single story? It's only the Verizon building.
The point of the original discussion, from my point of view, the 12,000 square feet was to accommodate first floor senior housing,
Yes.
period.
Yep,
But I felt 12,000 square feet, 6,000, if you're gonna have 6,000 bottom, 6,000 top, that's plenty big for the Lyme
okay,
common.
well, what we're gonna do, because I think a single story building is gonna look like Pondview Apartments or something like that, and that's not appropriate for the common district, so I'm gonna want myself a 2-story building, because that's consistent with the architectural character of the area. And
That's true.
if, and if then the seniors can't, I don't know. I just think if we're gonna allow 12,000 square feet, we should allow it to be 2-story. just because
Well,
that's what it
that
looks
was,
like. Okay, that's just my.
do you remember the
my opinion.
discussion
Yeah,
at the
I remember
beginning?
the discussion.
Yeah,
So
no, I
what's your
wasn't there for
thought
that.
about it?
Well, I'm just thinking about it, but then to complicate it further, I'm gonna suggest that we add the commercial district.
Well, let's hold,
No,
let's hold off,
But then you
let's
can
hold,
change
no,
it.
no,
We're talking about
let's
this.
just
We're
do
talking
this
about
for the
this.
time
Right,
being.
but
the
this
common.
affects that.
No,
common.
no, let's do this
For
for
the
the
common.
time being.
Okay, so we're talking about just the common.
Yep,
Yeah, I think I agree that 24,000 square feet is.
It's
big.
enormous, that wasn't the intent of the original discussion. The intent, it was very clear that the 12,000 was the gross floor area, at least in my recollection.
And I was one of those who was leaning toward, having it all on one level.
Right.
I was less inclined to have seniors on the second floor for
Right.
a variety of reasons. But I also agree that I think if you had 10 units all on the first floor, and then you had a second floor that was all mixed use, or a large chunk of mixed use, then I think that you're for one, you couldn't do 12 and 12, because
No.
then you'd have 20 units,
Right.
which we can't do anyway.
right,
So you're gonna be back to, if you wanna have it be 2 stories, it'll be 6,000 and 6,000. So I think John's way of doing it gives you operating flexibility to be 1 floor or 2 floors, but it constrains it so that you don't go to 24,000.
well, I'm just saying, probably what we're gonna get is then, a single story that's gonna look pretty odd in our common district.
Well, if it doesn't
if it-
meet the criteria of harmonious and
Yeah.
consistent, then
Well,
we don't
so
approve
you
it.
guys are gonna like tell whoever comes forward with a 10-unit, 12,000 that
It
you
depends on,
can't.
actually, it depends on where it is. I can imagine places where I think that would be okay.
Well, and I will say also that because we are giving up the ground level for development, what the heck, what's wrong with putting it on the second floor too? Especially if they're
So
not,
do you want,
if
do you,
it's not
do you wanna
visible.
prohibit somebody from having first floor only?
I don't know how you're gonna find that to be harmonious with the Lyme Common architectural, character.
Well, what's everybody's
I
thought
don't-
on
I
it?
don't think we
I don't
should
think we
set
can
people
prohibit.
up for failure on this one.
I don't think you can prohibit telling somebody they can't build all at one floor.
I think there's lots of ways you can do it.
Well, I don't know how you're gonna enforce this harmonious and consistent with the present character of the neighborhood then. Because if you,
No,
if they're to put like a.
Well, it depends
a
on the
pond view,
neighborhood.
Right,
So
there are
the
no
li-
one-story structures except at my
There are,
house and
there are
garage.
areas that are,
Well, the market is one story.
there are areas in town, or,
No, I'm talking
Are-
about.
If you wanna be harmonious, what you do is you put a two-story building closer to the street with some upstairs. And then you put, if you want more people to be on the
I would
ground
agree
floor,
with
you
that.
put some smaller condo-looking kind of stuff in the
Yeah.
back where it looks like carriage houses.
I think we,
And now it fits into the
I
neighborhood.
think we had that discussion, because we did talk about if this passes, we're gonna, add something to site plan review saying that it's requested or encouraged that you come in for an informal,
Mhm.
and then we'll require a preliminary, and obviously the final, so that the person who's attempting to do this, as they lay out their work, they're gonna get immediate feedback.
Mhm.
Before they spend the
Before
money
they-
on the design.
Yeah, so that they don't get lost in the woods. But I don't think we wanna say you can't have first floor only senior housing.
I'm not saying that, well, but I don't know, then I think what we might need to adjust what we're saying up in the top paragraph then.
Which,
About the harmonious and consistent, I mean, harmonious might be okay, but consistent is not gonna be what we're, unless you're putting on a,
I don't think
facade.
we have to take consistent out. If it's not consistent, we'll give that feedback right away.
Mhm.
That's not gonna work. But there are ways for it to work.
Yeah, it really depends on the roof line, roof pitch and all that, too. I mean, you might be able to build one story and have it look not too bad.
Well, I think you've got, in either direction, you've got risk. If it's all one level and it looks like, a strip mall, well, no.
Right.
It's not gonna work.
Yeah,
But if we do what you were saying, which is all two stories and it's 24,000 square feet,
mhm.
That's not
then
gonna,
now you've got, somebody building something that's bigger than a Grange Hall.
Nobody's got,
And
anybody's frontage, I mean, except for, I don't know, who's got a lot of frontage, so you're not gonna have like a long extent, because you've got, we're not gonna allow people to build to their lot lines, but you don't have that much frontage, so necessarily it's gonna have to have some depth, or be
Right.
U-shaped or something like that. So it's not gonna,
yeah, but
Maybe,
first of
and that's
all,
what I-
I'm not gonna
all I
support,
could imagine was. the
I'm not gonna
property.
support something where there's 24,000 square feet of gross
Okay.
floor area.
I think the onus is on the designer to come in with something that fits in with the town. I don't think that's,
Yeah.
I don't think that is it's an onus, but it's not onerous.
It's different, and I don't wanna go down this road right now, but if we're talking about the commercial district,
I'm not.
no, I'm just saying, from my point of view, that's different. But 24,000 square feet in the Lyme Common district is, to my mind, is inappropriate.
How many square feet is this complex here?
No idea. Again, looking at the building across the street is 14,000 square feet of footprint. So that's Earl Straub's old building,
Mhm.
and so that's
But I'm just going,
the scale.
this
that-
is effectively one story of I mean, it's got roof pitches and stuff,
Right,
but,
but there's no
but it-
second story.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
there's no,
right.
Right,
no
but
That's
living
what I
space.
was saying, David, it depends on the roof pitch, you know, how it's.
well, then
like
that, a lot of that is just design, it's just architectural
Right.
design.
Right.
And, yeah, if you make it look like a crappy strip mall, then we're gonna say no, but if you come in and you say, well, it's kinda got gables and it looks a little bit like it could be the carriage houses from next door, then people are gonna not, you drive by, you won't even notice it.
Right.
So it really all depends on how somebody decides to make it fit in with the character of the village.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's a real mystery, and that's used on all sorts of, in all sorts of ordinances. So where are we with this? Let me read this.
Okay, wait.
Yeah. Senior housing dwelling units may be no larger than 1,200 square feet. Common areas shall not be counted as residential square footage within the principal structure. The maximum building footprint and maximum gross floor area of all the buildings on the lot may be no larger than 12,000 square feet. Okay, is that okay?
What about the accessory structures?
So, well,
Or not counted.
yeah, I don't have the language one, but if, I do address parking and,
Well-
so do you wanna add language about the accessory units?
Yeah, well,
I mean,
no,
accessory
structures,
structure.
I was just saying, you know, because this is fairly common in many zoning ordinances, and it's a pattern that exists, that the maximum building footprint of garages and other accessory structures may not exceed 50% of the building footprint of principal use. So it's just saying, you can have half the amount in your garage. That means that if you had a 1,200 square foot unit, you can have a 600 square foot garage.
Or if you had.
600 square foot garage.
If you had
20 by
20 by
30.
30.
Or you could have
2-car
6,000
garage.
square feet of accessory.
But that counts towards your 12,000 total, correct?
I don't know. We have-
Well, all right, here's what I
It's hard to
was,
say that
here's
or
what I was
not.
gonna say for parking. We have, parking may not be located in the front setback
Mhm.
and shall be provided on site following the standards contained in Appendix A of the site plan review regulations.
Yep.
Enclosed parking for residents is required. And then one way of addressing it is saying that, I don't know whether this will work, but we could just say that either a percentage or all of it is excluded from the total whatever, footprint or gross.
I think it should be excluded, but I also think that it should be limited in how much accessory.
So, you know, here's some math. If you have, I did 240 square feet for 10 vehicles, is that reasonable?
No,
No.
per 240 per one.
Yeah, per vehicle, times 10 is 2,400. And, so, all right, so one space,
That's a lot of scribbles.
yeah, one space, I think, one space, we have it that it should be 1.5 per unit.
Mhm.
So one space should be enclosed parking, required enclosed parking dedicated to the seniors. And the other half space should be required, but that can be outside.
The other has to, and when we say enclosed, is that four sides, or is that just the roof?
Fully enclosed,
Fully
fully enclosed. These are for seniors.
Yeah.
I mean, I
I
think,
think the idea is keep the snow off of
Yeah.
them, so.
no, I mean, this
This is not
is,
a carport, you can have a carport.
it's not for senior housing.
Okay.
I would say fully enclosed.
So back to your logic, if 12 by 20, which is about the bare bones minimum,
Yeah.
Right.
240 square foot per parking, inside parking or covered parking, and the maximum number of units is 10. So that's 2,400,
Right.
and so somewhere
And
in
then
that
you-
range, you would say covered, covered or
I'd say
fully
fully
enclosed, parking, not to exceed, and 2,400 is probably a little bit on the small side.
You could say 2,500.
You might wanna give yourself a little lanyard
Yeah.
for,
25?
Depends on the size of the car.
Well, and also, if you're going to be fully enclosed,
the,
you're considering, you have to have the building
Right, itself.
structure itself has to be, assuming the outside,
So what do you think would be a reasonable add-on to the 2,400?
Make it 3,000?
probably
3,000?
something like that.
Okay, so 3,000.
because,
It's 25% of the total gross area, which is not bad.
For the doors to close and.
Yeah, right, sure.
Yeah, the thing,
So what about this?
To be able to walk in between the cars.
We could do a percentage, or we could say, maybe a percentage is better. If compatible with all the other requirements of this Article 13, up to 3,000 square feet of an accessory structure dedicated, it's too complicated?
Keep going, keep going.
Doesn't need to, I mean, it's gotta be, we don't have to say, it
Okay.
needs to be consistent with all these things, of course it
Okay.
does, we don't need to say that.
Up to 3,000 square feet of an accessory structure dedicated solely to parking for the senior housing residents shall not be counted as part of the gross,
Right.
gross,
So not be counted in.
or maximum lot coverage, or
No, building footprint or gross floor area.
Right.
gross floor
What you're
area?
saying is the same,
Yeah,
So you're
Right,
giving
it
them a
doesn't
bar.
matter.
right?
no, actually, they're not the same in this context. Gross floor area,
We're saying gross floor area and footprint.
In C, you're basically saying it's exempt from the
No, you
restriction
have
in
to
C.
say footprint too,
yeah, I would have to say both.
yes, yes. But why does it have to be exclusively garage? What if I wanted to have kayak storage?
That's different, that's a different accessory structure. If they wanna squeeze them in there, they can, but we have to have it so that there's fully enclosed parking for seniors.
Okay, so.
That's the primary goal.
Okay, so what if, I wanna have my garden shed separate from my garage?
Then you build, yeah,
Then you only need to make 9 units and
So
one of them
you're-
becomes garden
Right.
shed.
Okay, you're allowed to have that,
yeah,
okay, so.
Be a nice
as long
garden
as long as the lawyer says it's compliant. And I assume it is because somewhere in the state, that 315, that references you to something else, it makes the point that gardening is particularly important for seniors.
It is.
No, I mean, it's in the language.
I know.
But the bottom line is, any other accessory structures do count towards
Yes.
the 12,000.
This is exempt.
Okay.
So I think you might wanna say that,
Just
Yeah,
parking.
other accessory structures count toward.
well, I'd say accessory buildings, cause, I mean, are they gonna, if they had a picket fence, they're gonna, like, take the,
I wouldn't count it because a
not a
fence is
building.
not, fences are specifically excluded from the zoning ordinances.
So what are we saying? All other accessory,
structures, then if, no, I don't want.
accessory structures,
Fall within the controls of item C or whatever.
Or.
Let's get better
Are
language.
counted
Let's be counted
toward
for
the
the total.
maximum gross
Count
floor
towards the
area
total.
and building footprint.
so all other accessory structures shall be counted.
Well, it says the area of all other accessory structures.
What area? So give me that language again.
The area of all other accessory structures shall be counted in the calculation of maximum gross
Limitations.
floor area and building footprint.
Shall be counted towards,
The maximum gross floor area and building footprint. So, but what we're saying is, see, we call these things gross floor area and building footprint of all buildings. So we have to say building and accessory structures shall not exceed, because we're just saying
Yeah.
that those are counted in.
Right.
Yeah,
See that first thing, so you could just say it in that way, and then we provide the exemption for the garage. So the maximum gross floor area and building footprint of all buildings and accessory structures shall not exceed
all
12,000.
buildings,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
and just put it
That
there,
would do it.
yeah,
accessory.
yeah.
Say that again, Vicky?
Okay, so the maximum gross floor area and building footprint of all buildings and accessory structures shall not exceed 12,000 square feet. And then we say common areas are not counted, and we say that up to 3,000 feet of your garage is not counted.
Well, yeah, but would that be all in that C?
We're talking about coverage and areas, makes
It
sense.
makes sense to put it there.
Yeah, so you could have them, be, you know, C little one, C little two, C little three,
Yeah, cause it
C
starts to
little
get a
four.
little unwieldy there.
It's a big C.
Right, well, it's all related, and it's better to have it
It's
here than
above
find
C.
out later.
All right, so,
It does fit in there.
okay, so senior housing units may be no larger than 1,200 square feet, so there's one.
Yep.
Okay, there's your first one.
Yep.
Two,
Yep.
and I'm putting double I, you know, I
Yeah,
double
yeah,
I.
yeah, little I.
Common areas shall not be counted as residential square footage within the principal. Then 3, the maximum building footprint and maximum gross floor area of all the buildings and accessory structures on the lot may be no larger than 12,000 square feet.
Well, so shall not exceed 12,000 square feet is pretty clear, like you had it before.
What is it?
Shall
Shall
not
not
exceed
exceed.
12,000 square feet.
Okay, shall not exceed, okay,
John, I got behind
okay,
on the wording, so when you
okay,
get
so
that-
I'll do it again. So, and everybody else also?
And you'll send that to me.
No. Okay, I, or 1.
Yeah.
Senior housing dwelling units may be no larger than 1,200 square feet. Double I, common areas shall not be counted as residential square footage within the principal structure. 3, the maximum building footprint and maximum gross floor area of all the buildings and accessory structures on the lot shall not exceed 12,000 square feet.
Yep,
So then we're gonna contradict that in the parking section.
yep,
So are we now adding that parking section to C?
no.
Okay,
We add your thing about garages not counting in area
okay.
there, but, you know, your F can stay by itself.
Oh, okay, so, but we're adding the language about,
Fully enclosed parking up to 3,000 square feet will not count toward the 12,000 square foot.
Right, yes.
all right, what was, all right, so fully enclosed,
Closed parking for senior residents, up
enclosed.
to 3,000, up to a total of 3,000 square feet. You don't want it to
Wait,
be
what?
per person.
Why does it need to be fully enclosed?
Well, because what if the snow gets in there? You're gonna have the seniors, the 80-year-old people digging themselves out?
Okay, so I'm just thinking about what's wrong with a horse shed type of thing. So it might be enclosed on 3 sides and not, you know, with no door, and they just drive in. I mean, that's,
Well,
We
everybody
just
chime
We
in.
just went through that, yeah.
I mean,
so why can't we just call it covered housing? What if it looks like a carport, right? So there's a roof over it and it's open on the sides.
I don't know we know what the lawyer's gonna say, but it's really hard for me to imagine that,
Maybe-
Carport is
maybe,
covered
John, we should
parking.
leave it up to the
Yeah, I would
developer,
just say
the
covered
person's
parking,
building.
not fully
If they wanna build it
Well-
open and people don't like it, then they'll complain and they'll close it.
The class I was at on
yeah,
Monday, it had nothing to do with this. It was in the bottom floor of a senior housing development in Keene.
yeah,
And they had covered parking, it was just a carport. That, you know, it had reserved signs for
okay,
the individual units. It was open on 3 sides, it was a ugly steel structure like you'd find in many cities.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree with you that it, you know, for seniors, it's nice to have it closed, but I'm just saying that maybe we just let the developer decide what he's gonna do.
well,
I mean,
the developer's gonna have to be compliant, and if you read the language of the senior housing stuff, it's,
Well, maybe attorney.
Fully
I-
Well, if
enclosed,
we're just trying to exempt it, And we're providing an exemption, we just say, an exemption for covered parking up to 3,000 square feet does not count towards the 12,000. And then they can decide to do what they wanna do, we don't have
Okay,
to require.
well, we don't have to, but they're gonna have to be compliant.
Right, and they get a bonus because it's exempt.
Okay, so we're
It's
saying,
covered.
what are we
Yeah.
saying, covered parking?
Covered.
Yes, let's call it covered, yep.
Covered
That's
parking,
easier.
3,000 square feet of an accessory structure, or so we're, well, I mean, when we say, what are we calling this?
It's just part of the area,
No, I mean, are we calling this a garage, or are we calling this
just say covered
Covered
parking.
parking.
Just covered parking.
covered parking?
Yeah.
Okay, up to 3,000 square foot of covered parking,
Per unit,
covered parking,
Total.
No,
total.
covered parking dedicated solely,
That's 300 square feet per unit,
Yeah,
if you have 10
yeah,
units.
yeah,
dedicated solely to to the senior housing residence shall not be counted as part of the building footprint or gross floor area.
Yep.
The area of all other accessory structures shall be counted towards the maximum GFA and BF.
Okay.
Yeah.
We sort of already said that when we changed the wording up above.
We did?
Yeah, in number one, we said buildings and accessory structures.
But-
Okay, no, I'm lost here. You mean in C?
C3,
Yeah.
we said the maximum gross floor area, blah, 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 of all buildings and accessory structures shall not exceed 12,000 square feet. So you already said
Oh, I
accessory
see,
structures
so
count.
I got it.
You don't have to
yeah.
put it in, and
Right,
it
right,
doesn't
right.
really belong in the parking area
Right.
anyway.
Okay, so is this language going to be 5 here? That I just read, or is this gonna go in F with the parking?
I think it should go in C, because we're talking about limitations on area.
Alright, so this is,
might be clear there.
alright, so this becomes C 5.
And do we wanna say covered parking or garages?
No,
Just-
that's a covered parking.
A garage and a covered parking are the same thing.
Covered parking
Or
is a
they-
carport, it could be a shed, it could be a garage. We don't need to specify. Covered
So-
parking is covered parking.
So,
Means it has a
that'll be
roof.
clear, because I mean, if a developer said, oh man, I really wanna build garages, but they only
Mm-hmm.
Covered parking is all three.
Yeah, that includes.
Yeah, in terms of that, I mean, I kind of prefer garage or fully enclosed, but to your point, I think that clearly, that's clear that would cover,
So the developer can come to us and say,
yeah,
what about garages? We say,
yeah,
sure.
Okay.
Does it have a roof? Yep, it's covered.
yeah. Because we don't have a definition of garage anyway.
No, we don't want one.
This is an accessory
We tried to do that
structure.
for 2 years, it was crazy, no, we don't want one.
Yeah,
Right, okay.
Yeah.
all right,
okay.
C,
Sounds
parking
good.
sheet. Just bear with me for a moment. Okay. D. The number of senior housing units on a lot shall not exceed 10. I think we were okay with that.
Yep.
Okay, so now we're to the dimensional controls, and I had a question about whether E should move up ahead, should become C. Because it seems more organized. We have senior housing in A, where it can be located, then in B, who can be in it. And then we start addressing dimensional controls. So it struck me that to have this language as C, and then have C move down to D.
It fits the hierarchy,
Yeah,
in that you've gotta meet all these things before you even get to talk about
exactly.
the next.
I would move C then below D also.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right,
So I
so
would,
So E becomes.
E becomes
C.
E to B, C to D.
Oh, B's, who lives there?
B stays.
Oh, I'm
Should be,
sorry,
so
yes,
E
sorry,
becomes
D,
C.
thank
becomes-
you.
D becomes C.
All right, E becomes C.
E
Or, I'm
becomes
sorry,
C.
E
becomes
becomes
C,
C, and what?
then C
becomes D.
becomes
D.
C becomes
E.
D.
Oh, you
And,
want- you want
what?
C last?
C becomes E and D stays as it is.
Right.
Okay.
Wait a minute, wait a minute.
Yeah.
No, 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 no,
All you
no,
gotta
no.
do is make an arrow that goes like this.
Hold on. E becomes C, right?
E becomes C.
C becomes D. So D doesn't stay as D. D becomes E.
So you want D as the last,
Doesn't really-
at the very end.
Doesn't matter.
Oh, it doesn't,
It all
well,
applies.
well, we can't have two Ds, so what do you want next?
Well, it seems if you put E up,
Have two
yep.
Ds.
and then you drop,
C to
it
D.
seems to me that, D, defines, okay, you can only have 10.
Yeah,
It follows the hierarchy.
Right, and then you're saying, okay, you got 10 here, and then you're gonna start talking about the individual units.
So
The-
D
the-
stays where it's at.
wait a
The,
minute,
uh,
no, no, let David finish. What, David, what goes
I think
where?
he's saying the right thing.
Yeah, what goes where?
Okay, so what I would say is that C becomes E,
Right,
you move, or, I'm sorry, E moves up to the
C.
third item,
that's C.
yeah, C.
E becomes C.
Yeah. D stays where it is,
Okay, okay, so D stays where it is.
Yeah.
And C becomes.
then C becomes E.
E.
Which is what Kevin said.
So we're just,
Right,
we're
okay.
just
I'm agreeing with
switching
Kevin.
C and E.
Oh, okay.
That way,
Yeah.
but,
Kevin is always right.
that way you have a hierarchy of saying, you know,
I'm gonna ask
B
your
is,
wife about that.
talks
I tell her
about
the same
the,
thing.
Still not-
yeah, the-
Okay, so C is
Switching E.
the dimensional controls.
Can I throw something
Yeah,
in here?
please.
I was gonna say, we should put the, what is currently D right after the residence age. It's short. it's
I'm
simple.
sorry,
So
I
I'm
get-
saying we should move D up to follow B. So, talk about their age, we say senior
I
housing
see
has
what
10
you're saying.
units. And then we go
And
into
then-
all this dimensional stuff.
Okay, so now I get to
So,
completely cross out everything I just
Yes.
did.
so D becomes C,
Oh, I can't say that.
okay.
Okay, hold on. I think that's a good point.
Yeah.
So D, all right, I'm just gonna start all over. D. beco-
Follows B.
D becomes C.
Right,
Yep.
Okay, then what?
then I don't care.
No, I'm not talking.
Then dimensional, then D is dimensional controls,
All
and
right.
E is 12,000, blah, blah, blah.
Oh, hold on, so then the dimensional controls,
move
which
E
is,
up to D.
which is currently E,
Yeah.
So E would be D,
E becomes D.
D, right.
And then C now becomes E.
C, which is the
Senior dwelling units of
Senior.
12,000, 1,200 square feet.
DUs,
Okay.
becomes what?
E.
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 E. Well, that was easy.
Yeah, right here.
I got it, okay.
I had a root canal earlier this year.
Oh,
Earlier this week.
today?
and-
You felt about the
no,
same?
Earlier this week,
This-
and this is a lot like that.
This is harder, because you get Novocaine for that. All right, well, let's wait for Vicky.
Well. Yeah. Well, F we probably can leave.
Yeah, I think F is probably okay.
So then we can go on
Uh,
to G.
Yeah,
Should it say?
Here she is.
Should
All
it
right,
say,
let-
should it say uncovered,
I-
uncovered
the
parking
organization
or
was-
additional
you mean for F?
yeah.
All right, let's just nail this down, because Vicky's back here. Where were we?
F.
All right, F. This is what. Oh, God. Parking may not be located in the front setback and shall be provided on site following the standards contained in Appendix A of the Site Plan Review Regulations. Enclosed parking for residents is required, but we wanna say covered parking,
For senior residents?
yeah,
Is required,
yes,
so if somebody's building something, they have to.
yes.
Okay.
It's,
That was the whole point, was.
Yes.
I know, it's a.
no, the 80-year-old people should be
Shoveling.
shoveling their way to their completely covered
That's
cars.
up to who's ever.
No, it isn't, we have to be compliant.
Oh, so it's, well, if it's
Of
compliant,
course.
yeah, That's different. if it's
No, let's
compliant.
write it so that it's not compliant.
I didn't realize that was part of the compliance.
Well, that part of the
So the state
compliance
says you
is
have-
common sense.
Right.
It's,
And so it says in there that if you're, for senior housing, you have to.
no, it doesn't say that specifically, but it says it has to be you have to be able to say this is suitable for seniors, so it's a given. But if you don't want it
No,
in
no,
there,
it's fine.
I
It's
can't.
just Tim's got the New England spirit, you know, where no one parks their cars inside their garages.
Well, that's what Brett was saying.
I don't think we would get approval for senior housing ordinance
From-
if we didn't have
From
that.
who, John, the state?
From the state and possibly,
Well, that's, yeah, if that's required, then yeah, we have to. I'm just
Well, I know in
saying.
Hanover, they're not getting covered parking.
All right, let's move on.
Yeah.
senior housing is not getting covered by?
Didn't have it and it's not gonna get it.
All right, well, we can come back to that. And we
I'm
can do
not
the-
saying,
No, it's fine,
I
it's
like
fine.
covered
I
parking
think we should
myself, I
require
built a garage,
I
I
think we
love
should
it.
require it.
Yeah. All right, any building deemed to be a contributing building in the Lyme Common National Register Historic District may be developed as senior housing solely through conversion.
Can we check the language of how it's, the Lyme Common is listed in the, or you know, exactly where this is?
As noted in, so
Yeah, we can't
so
really
you,
say
so
that.
you wanna be more specific as what?
Right, because
Yeah, we should use their language, whatever it is.
well,
Oh,
You had it out here, that big binder,
So
well, no, the big binder was just the
National
Whatever
Register
commission.
nomination.
right, it's in the National Register nomination application
Mhm.
was where these things are all listed.
Right, and then that nomination resulted in Lyme Common National Register Historic District. I'll make sure that it's a
So,
thing.
I
yeah,
just wanna make sure that it's,
yeah,
that the wording is,
is exact.
yeah, I think contributing is right, but we can double check.
well, no, I think the contributing is absolutely correct.
You want the right title.
I want the right title to,
Yeah.
I just was questioning the Lyme Common National Register Historic District. I think it's just Lyme Common Historic District.
Well, yeah.
I'll see what
But I
they
think
say.
technically it's the National Historic.
Vicky's on the case.
Yeah, I'll
Just,
look it up.
that's all I'm asking is that it be the,
No, that's, you're right. It should be.
Well, it's,
So
Lyme
they-
Common Historic District was listed in the National Register of Historic Places in 1988.
Right.
So I would say take out National Register and just call it the Lyme Common Historic District.
okay, that's kind of what I thought, but I was,
Lyme Common,
It's called the Lyme Common Historic District in the Connecticut River Joint Commission stuff.
you don't need all that.
No, she just referenced
Yeah.
it.
yeah, no, I'm happy, just the way it read.
Right, right, right.
National
And-
Register,
So it's gonna say in the Lyme Common Historic District.
yes.
Is that defined anywhere else in our?
It's not
No.
defined anywhere else, but there's, you know, when you look at the application to the National Register for the Historic District, all the contributing buildings are in that application.
Would
And
it
so-
make sense in the ordinance to add Lyme Common District and just make a sentence that says Lyme Common Historic District means the area covered under the blah, 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 blah,
Well, it's
blah?
not, the Historic District is not just not all of the Lyme Common zoning district.
I know that, that's what I'm saying, so when you say Lyme Common Historic District, defining that as that area that's covered under the National Register of Historic Places is what defines the Lyme Common Historic District.
Right.
No, I think
That's
the Lyme
implied.
Common Historic District is reference enough to it.
I
It's
think
not,
it's implied.
Okay.
yeah,
Well-
that,
But then what about, we talked about this before, buildings that are not, that are significant, but not in the historic district.
I think we can only do so
Too
much.
bad.
yeah, you got close enough, you know, it's really the
I
others.
thought we fixed that, because remember Brett brought that up, he's talking about Nancy Granny's house, you know.
That's on the Historic District.
That is?
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay, I thought
definitely
he was
is.
saying it wasn't.
No, that, in John's original definition, it wasn't
Oh, that's
included.
right,
That's why you
Right.
went to this
Because it was-
definition.
Right.
It was
Because this-
abutting or across from it.
I
That's
get
right,
blamed.
that's
Yeah, this
right.
comes
that
up
was your
Union
fault.
Street, it goes out.
I just,
No, you're right.
I just wrote it down.
Right, yeah, I'm
Yeah,
not,
no, that, I'll take it, that's right,
But if
yeah.
you hadn't written it down, we wouldn't have got to here.
That
That's
makes
the
me,
point.
that makes me
No,
feel,
really, no,
feel
really.
really good. Okay,
Okay.
so we're good with that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, the owner of any senior housing, okay, so what I tried to do here is merge
Yeah.
Yes.
H and I.
Yep,
So I think this probably needs work, but the owner of any senior housing dwelling unit is responsible for supplying proof of each of the residents. Should that be residents, comma, or
No, it's fine.
oh no, each of the resident, it's
Yeah,
a single.
each, yes.
Residents age to the zoning administrator on January second of each year, and whenever a new resident occupies a senior housing dwelling unit. Upon notification by the zoning administrator, and somebody had added, or any
Yes.
resident of the town,
Yep,
of a failure to comply with this
you don't
requ-
need that, yeah, you're right, you don't need that.
don't need the resident?
No, you don't need of a failure to comply with H above, you don't need that.
No, I was gonna say, resident of the town of a failure to comply with this requirement,
Yes,
the select board shall be responsible for enforcement and shall take action within 14 days. Okay,
mhm.
all right,
I was
Yeah.
wondered,
go ahead.
As a practical matter, I wonder if, we could make it a little bit easier on both the zoning administrator and whoever owns this to give them the month of January.
That seems reasonable.
Yeah, the way it's worded now is they actually have to do it on the second.
Yeah, right,
So that's owners.
yeah.
February first, the final day of January, I mean,
Yeah,
something
yeah, I
like.
think that's reasonable.
How about the last day of December? I mean, you know,
Well, but there's like all this stuff happening at the end of the year. I mean, I don't know, I mean.
I think it's fine,
then do April 15th, I mean, you know,
no, I think it should be
Yeah,
done at the
okay.
beginning of the year. Um,
Yeah.
I don't, you know, whether it's the second or the 31st doesn't really matter. What are people's?
I think it's hard to make it one day, I mean,
Well, it's ultimately gonna be one day.
they need a
It's-
deadline,
it's-
When you say-
everybody
It's
needs a
just
deadline.
that at the.
can you just say by January second of each, well,
By January 7th, you know. mean,
I would agree with Rich,
I do
that by
too.
the end of the, by the last day of January.
By the end, by the last,
You could just say during the month of January of each year. So you just have to
I'd
do
say,
it.
I'll say by the end of by the last
Okay.
day of January.
right.
by the end of January,
Last day of,
or by the last day.
is that good for you, Dave?
Yep, that,
Yeah, I think that's
Right.
reasonable, good point.
So, John, I wondered,
Yeah,
what if we just, could we take out upon notification of the zoning administrator or any resident, just say, on H, where a new resident occupies a senior housing dwelling unit, and whenever a resident occupies a senior housing dwelling unit, the select board shall be responsible for enforcement, and shall take action within 14 days. Do we just-
of what? 14 days of what?
Of any violation of this article, I mean, leave that sentence in, but just get rid of, you know, in other words, put this sentence, start there right after this one, and just leave it at that. Does that take out too much? do you
Well,
think?
let's get feedback from everybody. So,
Want me to read that
wha-
again?
yes, so what,
Okay, so I'm saying the first H, we're reading H, the whole of H. So
Mhm.
whenever a new resident occupies a senior housing dwelling unit, comma, the select board shall be responsible for enforcement and shall take action. within
No.
14
No,
days.
no, no,
That's
no, no,
mandatory.
no.
No,
that's a period
yes,
after dwelling unit.
yep,
If you wanna rephrase the next sentence, that's okay.
Okay. Oh, yeah, okay, I had the wrong. So what if we just said the selectmen shall be responsible for?
Because
because they won't. We need to notify them that there's a problem, they're very,
Well,
very busy
okay,
people.
okay.
I think that,
And
I think the
January's
point,
not a good month, because it's just before town meeting, so they don't have.
so anyway,
what's
the
about it.
point is that we can't just give it 14 days from what? It has to be from something.
Yeah, okay, all right,
Is that okay with
14
you?
days from when they were notified.
Right,
yeah, okay.
okay. So,
or else what happens?
It's up to the select board.
Yeah, it is awkward, I mean, there's a whole,
Okay, so we have a thing called the 676s, you know, in the state statute about land use violations, and that's all you can do.
Yeah, what it says,
slap the wrists.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
I-
well, yeah, I'm gonna definitely build my senior housing and make sure teenagers are all living there, just like Tammy did with her lights. And I'll
Okay,
say
okay,
that
I'm not going
right
down
out
this
loud.
road.
Well,
Okay,
it's
end of
exactly
discussion.
about the
Aye.
enforcement, but,
we're gonna use the language that Stephen gave us, but I think I'd really like the lawyer to give us better language than this, because this is just ridiculous.
Again, write out what you want me to ask the lawyer.
Okay,
and
well,
I
it's
will
it's
get-
what you gave me, and it's the developer must conform to the requirements of RSA
Oh.
354A15. This is the new I, or whatever the hell this is, I don't even know what
J.
letter I'm on, is this
oh,
J?
oh, I don't know, did you?
No,
did
this
you
is,
merge
this is
them?
I think.
Okay,
So, I mean, this is where I would end it, the developer must conform to the requirements of RSA 314A15. But Stephen added, including but not limited to the provision of housing under a state or federal program determined by the US HUD as specifically designed and operated to assist elderly persons under the guise of Freudian interpretation based on 6 years of psychoanalysis using the psychodynamic technique and a lot of psilocybin. I think that's just too many requirements. So if we can just, if the lawyer would let us just have, the developer must conform to the requirements of RSA 354A15, that would be lovely.
what does that mean? I mean, what is that?
I've read it, you don't wanna know.
Well, people are gonna ask.
What it is the law. It says if you're gonna have, if you're
It
gonna have,
doesn't even, not even included in the land use.
if you're gonna have, because I think that may be a federal, I guess, read so many of these things. In order to get the exemption from the Fair Housing Act, which is a federal program,
Right,
this allows you to discriminate only with the group of seniors. 62 and older, you have to, then they have a list of things you have to comply with,
yep,
basically. That's what it says. And with the other one, HOPA, it's even more demanding.
yeah.
The housing is provided under a state or federal program that HUD and/or the state determines is specifically designed and operated to assist elderly persons.
Right,
That's the
that's
state requirement under 354A15.
Right. So it'd be great if we could just reference it, and anybody who wants to do this is obviously going to have to be, yeah, they're gonna have to be, up on the
And it's
requirements.
better to reference it, because if it changes, then you're still referencing it.
Right,
And
Right.
If we reword it and then that changes, then we have to go back and amend
Right,
our ordinance, which we don't wanna do.
right,
So
and then
better
for-
to include it by reference.
yes.
Right.
But I'd like to take out all that other wording,
Yeah.
if we can. J, senior housing shall not be changed to any other use for 25 years after first occupancy unless such change of use is first approved by the planning board. Should there be any language in there, I mean, yeah, what the criteria for the planning board exemption would be? Or should we just leave it as is? What's everybody's thought on that? I mean, really what we're talking about is a situation, I think what we're talking about is a situation where it would be just bad for the town. It either failed or it could succeed if X was done.
well, presumably this demographic bulge that's creating the baby boomer
Is gonna
bulge,
end.
that is gonna be over, and there will be a shortage of seniors at some point, assuming that we don't have a base population growth
Right,
of seniors that would live there, so I don't really know what that leaves us with. But I gotta think that there's always gonna be old people, just that there won't be as critical a housing
Right.
shortage for old people.
right.
Right.
But does that address the question about the criteria?
No, it does not.
Okay, just
But
clear
I mean,
that
I'm
up.
just thinking,
I
well,
think
what
you
if,
gotta leave it open.
what if all the seniors
Yeah.
died? I mean, there's some, influenza that everybody who was born after, you know.
1953.
Right, yeah, I mean, it's just, we didn't have the immune system and, you know, just died.
But I think we can just trust, we just have to trust future
Future
planning
planning
boards, and they can, it'll have to be up to them.
Well, I mean, what this is it gives future planning boards the option, yeah, the latitude to do something.
Right.
Yeah,
And we can't develop criteria, because it could simply be because somebody built it and they went bankrupt, and they just couldn't figure out a way to do it, and now nobody wants to buy it, and it's just sitting there empty, and everybody's like,
I mean, there could be
why
any
can't we
number
turn
of
this into office
scenarios.
condos? Or shared
Right.
workspace, or something else, or we wanna, so I think.
So is everybody okay with this?
yeah.
All right, so what did we,
I'm wondering about where we covered our, half a parking spot.
oh,
We
good
got
point,
the, we
good
got,
point.
we got,
Oh,
we got the,
thank
we
you.
got the full parking,
Yes.
covered parking,
Yes.
but we didn't get the half of
Well, that's,
parking
it's
spot.
It's
listed
in
in
the
the
table.
site plan review.
The
Oh,
table
yes,
is
yeah, the
one, the
appendix.
table already
Yeah,
says
it's
one
right
there.
here.
Right, right, another good point. Okay, and that language you had, Vicky, we didn't write that down, because
No.
that's, we're gonna have to work that out.
Right,
So you're pointing,
I'm pointing to, this is the off-site parking,
Yep.
off-site parking,
keep
so
pointing.
depending on whether you have an efficiency, 1 2-bedroom, or 3+ bedroom, here are the standards.
Mhm.
So it'll depend upon how big your unit is.
And most of these will be
1,200 or under.
one to 2 bedroom, so it'll be.
Well, we don't know, they could have an efficiency, or they could have a 3-bedroom, we don't know.
Cause if one efficiency unit of one,
And you could
I
have,
mean,
Right.
efficiency only gets one, and so that could be
Right.
the one covered,
yeah.
which means no one can come visit,
Does-
cause there's no place to park.
So
I mean,
that's why you need the 1.5.
Well,
The 1.5,
No.
1.5 comes in with 1 and 2 bedroom unit,
Right.
so I don't know what an efficiency unit is.
That's just a combined studio, well, it's like a studio with your kitchen, living, and bedroom all one, and you usually have a door that allows you to have privacy in your bathroom. That's
So it's
what
basically
efficiency
one
is.
room in the bathroom.
I see.
It's
So-
a
so-
studio
so-
part.
So, yeah,
Yes.
so I guess, you know, that's the exception that we'll have to live with, that may not get its half a parking spot, but
Yeah.
everything else,
Well, we're not saying, we're directing people to here, we're not saying it's 1.5. We're saying it's according to this, depending on the size of your unit.
right, which is 1 and 2 bedrooms.
Yeah.
Could be 3.
Your caregiver could live in one, and the other two over 62s they're not a couple,
Mhm.
so
you
they're.
could do
you know.
1,200 square feet with 3
Okay.
small bedrooms.
Oh, yeah,
And
they
need 2
have,
parking spots.
absolutely.
Okay, so it's covered,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
good.
Taking 1 car for the old folks and 1 car for the caregiver.
Okay, so a couple of questions I have, and I'm not sure I'm thinking clearly on this, which is why I have these questions. With the language we have, is it clear that senior housing can be built new, through expansion, and through conversion? Or should we affirmatively say that?
Say that one more time?
Okay, the question was, is it clear with the language that we have that senior housing can be built in any of those 3 ways?
Yes, new, you
Expansion,
You could, yeah, obviously you can't take a contributing structure and tear it down though. You have to have a non-contributing structure in order to make it new
no,
or
but there are some,
new lot.
there are some lots where you could just, you could, without tearing anything down.
I see,
Just
just
long
add
as they
that to
weren't,
it.
just long as they weren't in the historic district.
Right. Well, no,
Well,
no,
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 you could
because there's no
build-
tearing down. There are some
Build
areas where you could build something new from
Right.
scratch.
Cause there's nothing there.
No, in the backyard, there's enough lot coverage.
Yeah.
I don't remember, but remember that there could be some new construction? So-
Well, that's, you know, if you're, this is where, you know, I'm looking at this as the zoning administrator, and I read this, and somebody comes to me and says, I want to tear down this building and build senior housing. Okay, we look at, is it in that, one of the contributing buildings? No, then yes, you can tear down and build new. I have a lot that's empty, can I build senior housing? Yes.
Okay, so that you.
I don't see anything in here that says you can't.
Okay, but our
Our ordinance is
doesn't
permissive.
work that way.
Right, it's permissive,
It's
and,
permissive.
but, I mean, there
We're
is,
saying the use goes in that district,
right, it's a,
so.
Okay,
you know,
so,
so I'm looking at the use is permissive.
You mean permissive or permitted?
Permitted.
Yeah.
Permitted, but it's still, you know,
Yeah.
it's senior housing, and then there's nothing in this that says,
Okay, so
Um,
everybody's good that those, all three of those
That-
scenarios.
the only scenario I see that you may have issues with is, I have a house that's contributing, I want to expand it. And
But in conversions, you can,
you can,
You can expand it, yep.
I think we're gonna have to allow that.
yeah, and that's, again, I'm not saying either way, I'm just saying,
But there's nothing that would prohibit that.
right, and that's,
Right, that's how we
as long
want.
as you're, understand that,
Yeah.
that the idea of prohibiting the demolishing of one
Right,
also means that you can add on to it.
right, if you, yeah,
And the harmonious and consistent with present character of the neighborhood kicks in big
Absolutely.
time when you're a contributing unit, that you
Well,
better
you
be
can't
consistent
you can't
architecture with the rest of the
build
house.
a
Exactly.
concrete bunker
You're not gonna do
attached to it.
an aluminum Quonset hut in the
Right.
back of a historic building.
In
Right.
theory, you could even improve the look of the building.
But if you had an old house that was 6,000 square feet or 8,000 square feet, it sounds like you could, if it was conforming and consistent with the neighborhood, add 4,000 square feet.
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
if you did it in a reasonable way.
Yeah, and that's as long as you understand that,
Yeah.
that's how I'm reading this.
That's, I think that's our intention,
Yeah.
yeah.
You drew a distinction between new, expansion, and conversion. I mean, I get new, I understand conversion.
Well, if you're expanding, just what we were
An
saying, like,
addition, it would be an addition on the building.
in addition,
So you have a building that right now is 4,000 square feet.
Sure.
Up and down, so it's
Right.
8,000 gross
Yeah.
floor area.
Right.
You can add 2,000 square feet of footprint
Mhm.
up and down
Right.
to give you the 12,000 maximum. And if your
Right.
building is contributing, you can do it. If
Right,
your
I
building is
wasn't-
non-contributing, you can do it. But it does, the idea that you have to make it conform to the neighborhood, the look and
Right.
feel
No,
that.
no, no, I was asking a simpler question. I mean, that's a very good answer, but I was asking, wouldn't that mostly be conversion? I mean,
well, not under that, I was asking it in the way David's answering.
Well,
so
it-
you can stick an addition on your house.
Yeah.
That's expansion.
Yeah.
And you continue to live there all by yourself.
Yeah.
And I understand that. A conversion, I think of as splitting the one residence into multiple
Right,
Yeah, me too.
independent
Yep.
units.
Right.
Okay.
But you can.
So-
Same footprint.
but you could also, what we're
No,
saying,
okay.
Not in the same footprint.
No,
With a
you can
conversion,
expand.
you can expand.
No, no,
There's
but I'm
nothing that-
saying, but Rich is talking about, he's thinking of a conversion, you're saying within that, the conversion would be in that
Well-
building, and you can also add on to it.
Yes, okay.
Right.
So I understand your distinction now. Thank you.
okay,
That's it.
okay.
I'm good.
And I could imagine that somebody might stay in their house and add multiple senior units to the back of the house if they want to.
Mhm.
Or they could convert their house and make the whole thing senior housing, either one.
Yeah,
Um,
and they
And
can-
the big difference between conversions and the senior housing is that senior housing allows for greater dimensional controls than you would get through a conversion. If a conversion, if your house is at the maximum building footprint, you're not getting any bigger.
And you're not getting 10 units.
And you're not getting 10
That's a
units.
big,
It's
two
getting
big benefits,
So-
two enormous benefits.
Yeah.
But all three scenarios, conversion,
Expansion.
expansion,
Yeah.
or
New.
new build, need to be harmonious and consistent.
Yeah,
Yes.
in the-
Yeah.
in the-
yeah, that's a blanket statement.
Right.
And the
Um,
12,000
The exterior appearance,
applies to all of it.
it says, exterior appearance and massing of a structure,
Okay.
which means any structure, or should we say any structure? Or a structure? No, a structure, actually, that's an exterior appearance and massing of a structure containing senior housing, which is defined as an arrangement of dwelling units. Should we say, does that cover? You know, really what this is saying is only the appearance of the structure containing the senior housing, but we have accessory structures. The exterior appearance and massing of a structure on a senior housing, on a senior housing development.
I would,
Hmm.
the exterior appearance and massing of a structure containing senior housing and its accessory structures?
What about the exterior appearance and massing of any structure on a senior housing, in a senior housing development?
What if it's existing and already kind of, you know, does that mean you have to retrofit it?
You mean an already,
Like an
but
already.
then it's already consistent and harmonious if it's existing by definition.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
It is. It isn't?
They're non-contributing structures. I mean, we've had architectural historians say this is not contributing.
But so what? It's,
No,
it's.
John's not talking about contributing.
I'm not talking about
He's
contributing.
talking about
Any
harmonious.
structure that is on a lot is by definition harmonious and consistent with the present character of the neighborhood.
I don't think you wanna say that again.
What?
They're red herrings in every neighborhood that, I mean, it may be, yes,
Yeah, but we're
it's
just
part
stuck
of
with
this,
those,
of the
Vicky.
present character, but it's not necessarily harmonious.
Right, but I think
I
we're
get
just-
John's logic, and I
I
also
think we're just
understand
stuck
what
with
Vic's
those.
saying.
Well, I don't
It's
know
already
that-
there, it's in the
We're
neighborhood.
stuck,
so,
we're stuck
right.
with it,
No,
even,
no,
I know what you're saying, it's
But it
not,
doesn't
it
necessarily
might
make
be,
it
you might think it's
harmonious.
ugly, but because it's been
Well,
there for a long time,
actually,
we're stuck with
if
it.
it's
Well,
it's
then-
harmonious, if it's
Well, then we
there.
shouldn't even have this, because you know what?
Yes, we should.
We could have people emulating the most,
No,
the least attractive.
That's just not true, Vicky.
That is
It-
true.
No, it isn't. It isn't, because you're not looking at a single structure. You're looking at the character of the neighborhood.
Right.
Which includes the red herrings.
But it doesn't mean that you can take that as an example and build a giant version of it.
I hope we
No,
never have
no,
to
no.
talk about that.
Not at all.
I think,
I mean, come on.
yeah.
Well, I will say that one of the things when we were writing, the zoning ordinance is like, we like the fact that businesses could be mixed in the residential neighborhoods. And that's why business uses are allowed in Greater Lyme, that was a good thing about our community. So that, and they are not harmonious and consistent with the rest of the neighborhood, they're different, but we said that we like the variety.
You mean a new building, a new?
Well, just like some of the,
I think we're overthinking
Business-
this.
well, I'm just trying to get that, how are you gonna interpret that? mean,
I
really,
know how I would interpret it. That if I was looking at a neighborhood,
Mhm.
which is basically what I could see, looking around where this was gonna be, and the structures, by and large, were consistent with the neighborhood, that would be okay with me. And if there was a shed there, that was an old shed, I wouldn't wanna require the person to remove the shed.
Okay,
But that's my interpretation. I mean, what do other people think? I mean, I don't think we can not have that. I absolutely don't think we can not have this. It's just be reckless and disrespectful to the residents of the Lyme Common zoning district.
I think you have to leave it to judgment and criteria, and somebody's gonna have to, I mean, landscape architects have to do this all the time, of trying to decide whether something is of the proper scale, form. There's a lot to it. When you work for the US Forest Service, they have a whole manual about how to assess the architecture of various.
Yeah, but clearly, we're not
things.
gonna have a manual.
No, we did the same thing in Maine with our state zoning for things like docks and things like that, because, and we actually modified and adopted a lot of the US Forest Service techniques for how to do it, because we were always having this debate over, you know,
Right.
somebody wants to come in
So-
and they wanna build their frickin' Taj Mahal in the middle of, and put a gazebo at the end with lights on it,
Blink.
and nobody else wants
All right,
it.
I'm gonna just jump in, because we gotta close this out, we're moving towards 9. So, the exterior appearance and massing of a structure containing senior housing and its accessory structures, or, I mean, let's just, we wanna, how does everybody wanna address this?
I thought
I
what
think
you
it's
said
fine the way
was
it is.
of the structure of,
Why don't we just say not necessarily containing senior housing, but supporting senior housing? Because then that would mean that it's.
Why not exterior appearance and massing of a structure in a senior housing, of structures, any structure in a senior housing development?
Only because there's no definition of a senior housing development.
We just call it senior
Of,
housing.
all right,
Yeah.
the exterior appearance and massing of any structure
Within the senior.
associated with senior housing.
There you go.
Yeah. So we're just picking up the covered part.
Okay, and now the only thing I think we have left is Vicky's language, which was the proportional language.
Yeah, okay, so what I did say, I mean, it was a little longer, I said senior housing may share a lot or building with another principal use that is allowed in the Lyme Common zoning district. The gross floor area of the senior housing dwelling units, common areas and accessory buildings must exceed 70% of the gross floor area of all the development on a lot in order for the planning board to vary the dimensional controls as described in E,
Okay,
which is
how does
now C.
everybody feel about that? Because that's gonna be provisional depending upon what the lawyer says.
Right.
Can you,
I can just write it and give it to David.
okay,
Or
so,
someone I can just take.
and
can I
where
read your
would-
writing?
Yes, you can.
where
And I'll
would that go?
Photocopy this and,
What letter would that be?
It should be right near where the gross floor area is, it should be up toward, you know,
it should be part of,
toward the top.
it should be, you had, well, it's now E,
E.
you had
E becomes
I,
D.
double I, triple I, it would be quadruple I,
Oh, the dimensional controls.
yes.
So it should be added to that?
Yeah, well, it
No,
has,
no,
it
the
has,
senior housing dwelling unit of 1,200 square feet, and then you have the maximum footprint, now you have common areas, and then
Oh,
you
okay,
have
so
three eyes,
C
three eyes is
becomes,
maximum, and
this
then
deals
this
with
one.
use primarily. It doesn't, it deals with use primarily, which I think is separate thought than like what we've been talking about, which is the dimensional controls exclusively. So
It should be its own letter.
I think it should be its
and,
own letter.
okay, and where?
I don't have my copy anymore, so I
Okay,
can't really suggest, so put
Right
it in
after
wherever you
E,
like.
Right after E, the
and then
new
the
E?
parking G, then redo after that.
What?
So this is the new F, and then everything else gets re-lettered after that.
Okay. New F.
And then F becomes,
Vicky's
So
lang-
that-
Vicky's language.
Vicky's paragraph is gonna be the new F, David,
okay,
and everything else
Everything
after
else
that will
gets
get
knocked out.
re-lettered.
okay.
G, H, I, J, and K. All right, all right, are people good for another 10 or 15 minutes? Okay. Okay. So if you're adding like 1 or 2 units to existing uses,
Yep.
does adding 1 or 2 units qualify you for senior housing?
Not necessarily, because if, I just said it needed to be 70%
70%.
of the
Oh,
gross
okay,
floor
so
area.
that covers it,
Right,
okay,
right.
good.
So,
okay.
and maybe that number should be 60, or maybe it
Well,
should be 50.
that doesn't matter,
It's
because
70 right
we'll,
now.
we're gonna get guidance
Right, right,
as to whether it's actually legal or not.
okay.
And David, is it worth getting a New Hampshire Municipal Association input on any of this, or just go with it?
I would prefer to go with, our town council, now that we have some other people.
Okay,
Right now, I've been asked by them to send both Walter and Laura anything
Oh,
that
great.
questions, so
Okay.
it's going to get a
Great.
little more visibility.
They understand the timing on it.
yes.
They will.
Okay, so I just have one more
And
question.
the only reason is, if for some reason something has to be defended in court, they're the ones that are going to have to do it, and they're the ones that really should be making these decisions.
Absolutely, that's great. So, with thinking about maximum lot coverage, 1 acre, 12,000 square feet covering 43,560, which is 1 acre, or at least what I got for 1 acre. That's 27.5% lot coverage.
Yeah.
Is that okay with people?
12,000 square feet is a quarter of an acre. Is that?
A little over a quarter of an acre.
27
And that-
27.5.
That's the, I mean, they wouldn't necessarily get it, but it's conceivable that they could get, we could grant them 12,000 square feet. But I guess if it was just inappropriate,
Well, then they get the accessory buildings on top of that, and that's quite a bit larger
Yeah.
than
Another
what.
3,000.
so I guess we could either, we could simply say that this is inappropriate for this size a lot. We'll give you
Right.
this much coverage,
Right.
but not the maximum
Right.
coverage.
I think it really depends on the lot.
Right.
Some lots would be fine, I think.
Well, it's
Well, if
actually.
it's a bigger lot, that number drops. is
Yeah,
the
yeah,
one.
it's, so for 2
So that would be
acres,
just a
for
single
2
acre lot.
acres, it becomes 13.75%, for 3 acres, 9.25, and for 5 acres,
What's the
5.
current percentage for Lyme Common District?
12%.
12%.
Wow.
Yeah, so
So
here's,
it's a big difference.
Yes, it's over double
here's the
on
deal
a
though.
1 acre.
They have, if you have consistent, lot coverage, of more than 12 to 15% impervious, then you see, detrimental, impacts on the water quality. So
So,
that's kind of a rule of thumb.
so I mean, first of all, the 12,000 is a maximum, it doesn't have to be granted on a 1 acre lot, because it's not appropriate for just one reason, is one that you just pointed out. But the other thing is, I don't think that any 1 acre lot, I can't assure this, but my recollection is there was no 1 acre lot that qualified for the maximum anyway, but I'm not certain of that. But I just wanna make sure it's okay with everybody that,
Could happen.
well, it could only happen if it was approved. We are not saying that 12,000 is guaranteed, that's maximal lot. You know, you have a great lot that just, it works, and we can allow up to that. But if you have a constrained lot, even if it's, 3 acres, but it's, 3/4 steep slope or wetlands, there are other issues. Or you have lousy gallons per day, you're not gonna get that. So I just wanted people's thoughts on whether that's
So
okay.
you're more likely to get stuff like ponding of water on the neighbor's property and things like that when you get that level of impervious.
Exactly.
on
That
the
can be
small lot.
solved, at site plan review, again, going back into, the idea that you need to update the site plan review regs to be very clear on, that there has to be sufficient area for stormwater treatment, there has to be sufficient area for septic. All has to be done before the planning board can approve any of this. And, somebody coming and saying, here's my buildings, I want my approval, doesn't fly. You need to show, how you're gonna deal with stormwater, you need to show how you're going to, your septic and approved septic, show that you can, and either, or if not approved, at least a stamped plan from a septic designer saying, this is what I believe we can get in here.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, those requirements, from what I've read, are pretty standard.
Yeah. But I still think, if this passes, you need to follow through
Right,
and make sure you follow through with site plan
yeah,
to be
I agree.
very clear on these items.
Yeah. All right, so, any other comments?
Yes. So I've been giving this some thought, and I know we've been talking about having senior housing in the Lyme Common District.
We have?
But I wonder whether we really should include the commercial district.
Well, I'm open to the commercial district. My only, I mean, we've had this discussion.
I know.
And, you know, I'm okay with it. What came out of the discussion was that ideally, we should do our due diligence there, and maybe, you know, maybe we'll wanna allow more units down there.
Well, in other words,
So
what
what-
Vicky was talking about before, when saying, you know, a 24,000 square foot building, that might be okay there. You know,
Single,
even though it
single
might not
story
be-
is just great there, cause we already have single story, it fits right in.
But, well, but I think the point is, yeah, I mean, I would support that. What I was convinced of
Do the build-out
was
analysis.
to do the due diligence.
Right.
The
And
same
then,
process that
then we
went
could, I mean, both with, Vicky wanted the Lyme
Center
Center
District,
District,
see what-
we could
through.
do,
Same thing.
do the due diligence, and
Yeah.
I think you may find that your requirements for those areas may be different than
that's,
the Lyme
that's
Common.
what I'm thinking.
And so I don't think you're gonna have time between now and,
Right.
Right, because it's almost like writing a whole new.
Right, so the way that's,
Exactly.
Well, this, yeah, I
to
mean,
do the background.
The whole
Let's-
purpose of this is to provide the dimensional controls and other things like that and try to make it consistent with the character. Once you go down there, you're in a bit of a different situation. There's nothing preventing someone from proposing senior housing
Yeah.
down there tomorrow.
Yeah, I
It's
just.
just they don't get
don't-
all these benefits.
Yeah,
So the question is, what benefits do you need to provide down there to make it make sense?
we need to do due
We
diligence.
just haven't really
to
thought
do
that
that.
through.
Okay, well, maybe, yeah.
But I'm on board for that consideration.
Well, can I just say, I think then that our first paragraph here needs to be very different if we're gonna allow it there, because.
But we're not.
Okay, but I'm just saying, if you're gonna do that, Tim, you need to write something that makes sense about why we want senior housing there and not close to municipal and social
And,
services and
and
facilities.
I think that's part of why it's not wise to do that now.
Right, because we don't want to change
We,
this until we
we
actually
could,
do
we're
it.
gonna get something started, and then we can consider, based on actual data, whether it makes sense and how it'll make sense to do it in different areas. In principle, I've been suggesting that for months, but we don't have the time to do it.
Okay. So if and when we do it, then you're right, we should change
Then,
it.
then it would be different
Well,
criteria.
then you might want more
Right.
mixed use in order to give them additional services down there. So you might, be 70-30 here, but down there have to be 50-50.
Right.
Because that way you can have things like a doctor's office or
Well, in
or
addition.
a pizza shop or
In
a
addition to
coffee
that,
shop. or-
the reason it makes sense to me, or could make sense to have it in the commercial district, is because it's at the most southern point of Lyme, close to a lot of services in Hanover. And I know my doctor, my dentist, my chiropractor, I mean, anything medically, is south of there 5 minutes. It's actually, a very good location for medical stuff.
Mhm.
And then down there exclusively, you're that much closer to Hanover.
Mhm.
So the way I see it, Tim, is, we see how this goes, see how the town
Right.
decides how they like this in March, and then if it's well received, then we do the same exercise, same type of, whole process that we did for this, for
Right.
the commercial
Yeah,
district.
no, I agree.
And then we can, in same, finish that, do the same thing for Lime Center.
Right.
And if
Yeah.
it looks and it makes sense, then we
The
can.
Lyme Center might not be 10 units, it might be 5 units.
Well, no, whatever
or
that-
something.
whatever- it might
Wherever
be.
it leads us.
Right.
Whatever it leads us. And then, so I don't think this restricts us from not thinking about that in the
I just
future.
meant we should start thinking about it, and maybe mention that we are thinking about it.
No, I don't think we should never mention overthinking. It's absolutely prohibited.
It's a big secret.
It's
yeah.
prohibited.
Well, if someone was to ask at Little
Of
Town
course,
meeting,
of course.
let's say, you're talking about it.
Right.
Oh,
So, yeah, you know,
absolutely.
we dialogued on it, and it's something that we think
This
we're gonna
is-
take up.
This is what we're starting with.
Right.
But we're, you know, what we're doing is due diligence and not just pulling something out of a hat.
My business partner used to say, one insurmountable hurdle at a time.
Yes.
Right, exactly, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, do I have everybody's permission to take this wording and whether the letters are in their proper order or not, and work with David?
Yeah.
Yeah.
To, okay,
We
Get it
did,
to the council.
you did have a question here about 446 conversion.
Yes.
Do we need to?
yeah, do we need to update 446?
446, just to.
Maybe that's a question for the lawyer.
Yeah, I didn't think that, because it's really not a conversion.
Well, see, we use the word conversion, so maybe we need to put something different in that.
Ask the lawyer.
And solely through conversion. This has a meaning in our
Right.
ordinance,
Yeah.
and so we need to, so solely through not tearing down the building and changing the
Yeah,
existing
I would,
building.
I think that'd be a better idea, would be to remove the, in
Word
G, remove the word
Conversion
conversion and
Yes.
change it
to
to,
something that says don't tear down the house that's contributing.
Well, that's gonna add another half hour to this meeting.
No, you're gonna be working on this, so you know what our intent is, cause you're scribing this, right? So you can think of it.
You know, it may not seem like it, but I do have a life.
Okay.
Or a facsimile, reasonable
Okay,
facsimile.
all right, so.
So,
We should-
I guess what Vicky was suggesting is that now that you've got the ideas, and since you offered for you and David to work on the next draft, that you incorporate that thought.
my thought would be to ask the lawyer to give us guidance on what that language should be.
And I don't think Vicky and I are uncomfortable with that.
I don't.
I will say, I honestly think that the
Yes.
board can come up with its own language, it doesn't need to.
Board?
Spend my
Board,
budget
Could you,
of,
could you,
Okay, so
could you
could-
define board?
Could we just say through reuse of the existing structure?
repurposing.
Repurposing of the existing structure, how about that?
Is- Where are we?
On
G.
G, cross out conversion through repurposing of the existing structure, okay?
Beautiful. Who needs
Yes.
lawyers?
And then, we don't use the word conversion, I'm happy about that.
Of the existing,
Structure. Then, are we having the hearing on the petitioned amendment on January 9th?
yes, that's gonna go
Okay.
first.
Okay,
All right, anybody gonna dare keep us here any longer? Good. I'd like to thank everybody for their concentration and commitment. And please, everybody come to these meetings, it's crucial, these upcoming meetings.
we don't have any more meetings till January 9th.
Right, I mean the 9th and the 30th, and the 23rd if needed. But
So, John, we're not gonna pick up that item of new business that I sent.
that's your call, if you wanna bring it up, bring it up.
Is it important for
What
tonight?
is it?
So the question is, the board has, number of board members at meetings have been very small recently. And I'd like the board to talk about what we could do to address that problem.
Well, wait a second, you had your language here somewhere. What was the
But we don't-
language?
But we don't need to get it tonight, do we?
I don't think so.
What are you talking about?
So, in
Latest
particular,
bylaw changes?
in particular, we almost, if I had not been here and been available to be a full board member, we would have had to send an applicant away.
Yeah, that's why we have
Alternate.
Yeah.
alternates,
Right.
and we
Sorry,
have a
Well-
quorum.
So what, I mean,
That's what you're for.
But, I mean, what's your point?
yeah, so I guess I'll be blunt. Eric Furstenberg is away,
Yeah.
has been away, we've not had his expertise here.
And, so what are you suggesting?
And I'm wondering, does the board want to do something to get another elected full member.
So are you suggesting his removal?
I'm asking the board to.
But I'm asking you, are you
So,
suggesting
it
his removal?
certainly, it certainly would be something that somebody could ask if he cared to resign.
But are you asking?
I'm asking, actually, I'm asking you,
No,
John.
no, no, I'm asking you,
No.
because you're bringing it up. What do you wanna do? Because
I think we should have 5 elected.
what do you wanna do specifically? I'm asking you.
I would like,
Are you you wanna
So-
make a motion to remove Eric?
Well, I'm gonna step in here, the planning board cannot remove a member.
Right, we can only
Elected
remove
member.
an alternate.
Only can remove alternate members, are the only ones.
So if
that
you would
can
like
be-
to do that, you should take it up with the select board, because they're the only ones who can
Yeah,
remove
the
the
select
person.
board is the
Does-
one, and the board did agree that Eric was going to take a
Yes.
leave of absence.
Eric is an elected member and an extremely valuable one,
mhm,
and a trained economist, a very reasonable, fair-minded person.
mhm.
He had an unexpected opportunity
I realize.
and he was elected, and essentially is taking a sabbatical. And I don't want to have him removed. And I would be loath to do it for many reasons. One, I don't want to. Number two, if the town did remove him, he could sue the town. The criteria for removing a member is very challenging. And if he won the appeal, the town would be on the short end of his attorney's fees. I think I've been on the board for a long time, and when I first came on the board, there was a member who never came for an entire year, and she was not removed. So I'm loath to do it. I think it's a terrible
Well, we don't
precedent.
have that choice.
Unless, yeah, no, but regardless, I'm just giving my opinion, unless the person is malfeasant or is not planning on coming.
Negligent too, negligent or something?
There's a whole bunch of things.
Inefficient.
The inefficient is,
Malfeasant, and
yeah,
you're
and
right,
that,
we are
the
different
inefficiency
criteria.
standard is the most difficult standard to defend.
I agree. I mean, I've read that,
Yeah.
that same thing.
Yeah.
So, the question to the board, are you all content? As you say, Eric.
Content? No, I wish Eric was here, but he's not.
Okay.
I like Eric being here because he brings the average age down a little bit. And it's good to have somebody with kids in the school here on the planning board. I mean, we used to have Amber too, which was great. She went on to other things, so.
Well, the other thing, I think.
So
there
have we
hasn't
answered
been
the
a-
question?
I think
Have
we answered
asked-
the question.
Are we?
So, what's the sense of the board?
Well, I was gonna say, I think
I
it
think-
hasn't really been
I
a
think that's for
problem.
the
Yeah,
chair,
I
I think that's for the chair to ask.
Yeah,
and
I think at this
think-
point, we've worked really hard tonight. If you wanna bring this up again next time, when we're not involved in this, when we have a little bit of space, please do so. But I think,
Well,
is there anybody here who wants to remove, or would like to see Eric removed? I don't hear anybody.
And,
There's the sense of the board.
and that's the sense of the board. That's all I need.
For what?
This is a good enough answer.
But for what? What do you need that for?
To convince me that this is not, I mean, if the board were all, yes, let's go to the select board and say, let's do this.
The board
The
isn't.
board is not.
The board isn't.
That's fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank everybody seriously for their hard work. No, I'd like everybody to stay an extra half hour. I'm going home. Yeah, motion to adjourn, and I'm not signing that.
I will follow you home. I will stand outside.
You know where I live.
I know where you live.
Will you have a little boombox that's singing, in your eyes, the light that
I could find something to that effect.
David, is your office open?
Yes, it is. You don't need to do the secretary, I don't know why,
Yeah, it's just there. So what is the date today?
the 12th.
Can I do one, or do I have to do, can I do 12, or do I have to do?
You're signing it on 12.
I can do 12, I don't have to do this.
No, no, this is the,
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Yeah,
Yeah.
everybody have a
Happy
great
New Year.
time.
We'll see you next year.
Very likely.
I found the perfect present for my wife, and I told my son, he said, yep, that's the exact same thing I bought her. So now my